Welcome to the Ultimate Trivia channel, everyone on YouTube. Get ready to test your knowledge on 100 questions about the 1950s. I'm Ellen, your host. Who was the inventor of the credit card in 1950? Gordon Gould, Richard Knerr, or Frank X. McNamara? Frank X. McNamara. NASA was established in 1958. What does NASA stand for? National Aeronautics and Space Administration, North American Space Association, or Numinous Aviation and Space Agency? The National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Which 1950s culture group is often considered one of the predecessors of the hippie culture? Bohemians, Yuppies, or Beatniks? Beatniks. Cinderella was released in 1950 by Walt Disney. How long before Alice in Wonderland? 1 year, 5 years, or 9 years? 1 year. Which of these art movements started in the 1950s? Abstract Expressionism, Neo-Expressionism, or pop art? Pop art. In 1954, where did Hurricane Hazel strike before hitting North America? Haiti, Hawaii, or Jamaica? Haiti. Who invented power steering in 1951? Francis W. Davis, Wilson Greatbatch, or Arthur Spud Mellon? Francis W. Davis. How long did the Korean War last? That started in 1950. 3 years, 10 years, or 21 years? 3 years. The Rwandan Revolution that started in 1959 took the form of racial violence. Who were the two groups involved? Rwanda natives and British settlers, the Hutus and Tutsis, or Swetsanas and Hosas? The Hutus and the Tutsis. What was the name of the super typhoon that hit central Honshu and claimed 5,000 lives in September 1955? 1959. Super Typhoon Vera, Super Typhoon Lucia, or Kenny? Vera. Prior to the Vietnam War that started in 1959, what was anti-communist activity punishable by? Death penalty, deportment, or a minimum of 7 years imprisonment? Death penalty. Who was the inventor of the hydrogen bomb? Albert Einstein, J. Robert Oppenheimer, or Edward Teller? Edward Teller. What was the cause of severe tension within the Soviet Union after the death of Joseph Stalin? There was no chosen successor, resulting in collective leadership. The chosen successor aimed to tear the USSR apart, or senior communists took over. There was no chosen successor, resulting in collective leadership. What happened after the United States CIA coordinated and carried out the coup d'etat of Guatemala? A democracy was established, a republic was established, or a military regime was established? A military regime was established. How many founding member countries were there of the European Economic Community in 1957? 3, 6, or 11? 6. What government regime ruled over Cuba before Fidel Castro established a communist government? Republican, socialist, or dictatorship? Dictatorship. After the Second World War, until when did the United Kingdom still ration meat? 1950, 1954, or 1958? 1954. What term did Winston Churchill use to identify the boundary of the Soviet Union created to separate itself from the rest of the European countries? The Iron Curtain, the Iron Barrier, or the Iron Strong? The Iron Curtain. Who invented the pacemaker in 1956? David Warren, Gordon Gould, or Wilson Greatbatch? Wilson Greatbatch. Who took over as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in January 1957? Winston Churchill, Harold Macmillan, or Anthony Eden? Harold Macmillan. Who replaced Harry Truman as President of the United States in 1953? John F. Kennedy, Dwight D. Eisenhower, or Franklin D. Roosevelt? Dwight D. Eisenhower. Which comic strip debuted in 1950? The Amazing Spider-Man, Snoopy, or Peanuts? Peanuts. Which earthquake caused significant devastation on the 15th of August 1950, resulting in the loss of 4,800 lives? Assam earthquake, Tibet earthquake, or Earthquake Richard? Assam earthquake. What is the name of the first nuclear submarine launched in 1954? USS Nautilus, USS Nucleus, or USS Benicia? The USS Nautilus. Kermit appeared on TV for the very first time in 1955 on what show? The Muppets, Sesame Street, or Sam and Friends? Sesame Street. How many states were a part of the United States by the end of 1959? 46, 48, or 50? 50. NASA set up 11 years before finally landing on the moon. Which year was it? 1950, 1954, or 1958? 1958. Where did Fantastically Plastic Barbie emerge in 1959? The International Toy Fair, the Swedish International Toy Convention, or the Toys R Us Fun Run? The International Toy Fair. Which television show saw its first iteration debut in October 1959? Star Trek, The Twilight Zone, or The Days of Our Lives? The Twilight Zone. In 1950, what pope confirmed that there is no conflict between the theory of evolution and Christianity? Pope Pius XII, Pope Leo I, or Pope Gregory I? Pope Pius XII. What was the name of the Soviet Union's first artificial satellite launched in 1957? Sputnik 1, Luna 1, or Soyuz 7K OK? Sputnik 1. Which novel is often considered as the most influential work of literature to come out of the 50s? Fahrenheit 451, Atlas Shrugged, or Catcher in the Rye? That's Catcher in the Rye there. And Catcher in the Rye is the answer. What is April 11, 1954 identified as by a computer at Cambridge University? The most eventful, the day with the most deaths, or the most boring day of all time? The most boring day of all time. What baseball team dominated in the 1950s? New York Yankees, Atlanta Braves, or Milwaukee Braves? The New York Yankees. Other than rock and roll, what is the musical genre most associated with the 50s involving vocal harmony and nonsense syllables? Jazz, disco, or doo-wop? Doo-wop. What was President Eisenhower's initial reasoning behind the mass construction of interstate highways to improve national defense and mobility, improve traffic flow, or improve the time it takes to travel long distance? To improve national defense and mobility. What does the American government officially view its involvement of the Korean War? Because President Truman never got congressional approval, police action, military intervention, or deviation from the Constitution? Police action. From the invention of the polio vaccine by Dr. Jonas Salk in 1953, cases dropped from 58,000 to how much just 4 years later? Under 30,000, under 10,000, or under 6,000? Under 6,000. How many times did Adlai Stevenson run and lose against Dwight D. Eisenhower during the 1950s? Once, twice, or 3 times? Twice. Who was the President of the United States when the words "under God" were added to the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance during the 50s? Truman, Kennedy, or Eisenhower? Dwight D. Eisenhower. What crime was Wild Blood committed of in the United Kingdom during the 1950s in the Peter Wildeblood case? Acts of arson, acts of treason, or acts of homosexuality? Acts of homosexuality. Due to him dying in a car crash in 1955, how many of the 3 films James Dean made did he not see? 1, 2, or 3? 2. How many more people tuned in to watch I Love Lucy than President Eisenhower's inauguration just the day before? 1 million, 5 million, or 15 million? 15 million. What age of television is the 1950s coined as? The monographic era, the golden age, the age of color? The golden age. What was the reason that the Federal Communications Commission took the American Broadcasting Corporation to the Supreme Court? Nudity, game shows are a form of gambling, or advocacy of racial and cultural separatism? Game shows are a form of gambling. Which of the following trends were very popular in the 50s? Poodle skirts, purple eyeliner, or silly bands? Poodle skirts. Who did Queen Elizabeth II succeed as monarch in 1952? King Henry I, King Richard II, or King George VI? King George VI. What iconic theme park opened in 1955? Disneyland, Universal Studios, or Six Flags? Disneyland. Which of these sitcoms started in 1951? Golden Girls, Days of Our Lives, or I Love Lucy? I Love Lucy. Who was the actress that starred in the 1950s movie Calamity Jane? Marilyn Monroe, Doris Day, or Brigitte Bardot? Doris Day. And remember this hint for the bonus question coming up. Grace Kelly left the silver screen in 1956. Which of the following dances would you most likely stumble upon when heading out in the 1950s? Macarena, the twist, or ballroom dancing? The twist. Which of these was created in 1958? The hula hoop, tic-tac, or Kit Kat? The hula hoop. What unfortunate event took place in Egypt in 1956? Suez Crisis, early dynastic period, or Middle Kingdom period? The Suez Crisis. Which of the following prominent artists passed away in 1956? Rembrandt, Claude Monet, or Jackson Pollock? Jackson Pollock. What movie was released in 1959 and became one of the best movies of its release year? Breakfast at Tiffany's, Ben-Hur, or Planet of the Apes? Ben-Hur. Which of the following television shows first went on air in 1954? The Tonight Show, Married with Children, or Gunsmoke? The Tonight Show. In which of the 1950s movies did Marilyn Monroe appear? This Island Earth, American Pie, or Niagara? Niagara. Who played Anastasia McAvoy in Love is Better Than Ever? Brigitte Bardot, Marilyn Monroe, or Elizabeth Taylor? Elizabeth Taylor. What character was portrayed by Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday? The ambassador, the princess, or the secretary? The princess. What saw its first broadcast on television in 1954? The presidential election, cartoons, or Miss America? Miss America. Who was the third main star of the movie Love Me Tender, along with Deborah Paget and Richard Egan? James Dean, Elvis Presley, or Buddy Holly? Elvis Presley. Which comedian's show premiered on CBS in 1950 and ran through 1965? Jack Benny, Lenny Bruce, or Dick Gregory? Jack Benny. Who founded the news program See It Now in 1951? Dwight D. Eisenhower, Edward R. Murrow, or William Baldwin? Edward R. Murrow. What was Dumont, one of the largest hurricanes to hit Canada, an unsuccessful TV network, or a secret document hidden by the French government? An unsuccessful TV network. What TV show featured a young Richard Crenna in a recurrent appearance as a lovesick schoolboy? My Girl, Leave It to Beaver, or Our Miss Brooks? Our Miss Brooks. What was the name of the artist behind the 1951 #1 Billboard hit Be My Love? Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, or Mario Lanza? Mario Lanza. Which James Jones novel was the best-selling book of 1951? From Here to Eternity, The Thin Red Line, or The Merry Month of May? From Here to Eternity. The eye, CBS's logo, what was the background in the 50s? A circle, clouds, or smoke? Clouds. Who wrote the popular children's book If I Ran the Zoo during the 1950s? Dr. Seuss, J.D. Salinger, or Ayn Rand? Dr. Seuss. Before The Simpsons overtook as the longest running sitcom in the United States, which TV show started in 1952 held the title The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, Rick and Morty, or Days of Our Lives? The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Who sang Walking After Midnight? Elvis Presley, Patsy Cline, or the Everly Brothers? Patsy Cline. What entertainment venues prominent in the 1950s were also known as passion pits? Bowling alleys, last row in the cinema, or drive-ins? Drive-ins. Charlie Chaplin's last film opened in London in 1952. His re-entry permit was revoked on his way back to the United States. What was the reason? Un-American activities, multiple sexual assaults, or spying for the British? Un-American activities. Who was the original host of Meet the Press? Ned Brooks, Lawrence E. Spivak, or Martha Roundtree? Martha Roundtree. What are the three notes that made up the chimes NBC? ABC, CEB, or GEC? And the answer is GEC. Who released the one-hit wonder Turn Me Loose in 1959? Ricky Nelson, Fabian, or Buddy Holly? Fabian. Which former United States president relieved General Douglas MacArthur of his duty in the 1950s? Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, or Harry S. Truman? Harry S. Truman. What racy magazine was published in 1953? The Times, Cosmopolitan, or Playboy? Playboy. What 1958 movie featured the theme song Some Enchanted Evening, A Summer Place, South Pacific, or On the Beach? South Pacific. What was NBC News previously known as? Marlboro News Studio, Swayze's Movietone Newsreels, or Camel Newsreel Theater? Camel Newsreel Theater. Starting in the 1950s, what was the on-screen image broadcast called that helped technicians and home viewers recalibrate their televisions and equipment? QR code, test pattern, or rainbow bleep? The test pattern. What actor stars in the 1958 teen horror The Blob? Jeffrey DeMunn, Kevin Dillon, or Steve McQueen? Steve McQueen. Which of these fantasy novels was released in 1954? Tarzan, The Hobbit, or The Fellowship of the Ring? The Fellowship of the Ring. Which of the main characters in the cartoon strip Peanuts did not appear in the first strip in October 1950? Charlie Brown, Patty, or Snoopy? Snoopy. Who is the Russian-born ballet dancer responsible for the Nutcracker that premiered in New York City in 1954? George Balanchine, Agnes DeMille, or Mikhail Baryshnikov? George Balanchine. Who anchored the NBC News before Huntley Brinkley? John Cameron Swayze, John Chancellor, or Anne Curry? John Cameron Swayze. What Hollywood production facility was opened in 1952 by the CBS network? Universal Studios, Studio 88, or Television City? Television City. Where did I Love Lucy debut on October 15, 1951? ABC, CBS, or MTV? CBS. What Broadway musical premiered on NBC in 1955? High School Musical, Peter Pan, or Hamilton? Peter Pan. The first television station devoted to educational purposes was from which city? Pittsburgh, Scottsburg, or New York City? Pittsburgh. The initial link between smoking and white-type cancer was made in 1957. Mouth, throat, or lung? Lung. From which country did Olympic Airlines start flying from in 1957? France, Italy, or Greece? Greece. From which country was writer and philosopher prominent in the 50s? Simone de Beauvoir, France, Italy, or West Germany? France. Of course. In 1955, Einar Gerhardsen was elected Prime Minister of which country? The United Kingdom, West Germany, or Norway? Norway. How many people were killed at the 24-hour Le Mans race in France in 1955? 10, 44, or 83? 83. What was the name of the King of Sweden that passed away in 1950? Petros II, Dominic IV, or Gustav V? Gustav V. Seat, the car company, was founded in 1950 in which country? Italy, Brazil, or Spain? Spain. Which war was the American fighting man fighting that awarded him Times Man of the Year 1950? World War II, Cold War, or Korean War? Korean War. Who did Peter Townsend call up his wedding with in 1955? Princess Elizabeth II, Princess Margaret, or Duchess of Wales? Princess Margaret. Tetra Pak, a Swedish firm, was founded in 1951 to create which items? Various packaging items, milk cartons, or glass bottles? Milk cartons. Bonus question, why did Grace Kelly retire from the acting scene? Let us know the answer in the comments and your score. Thanks for playing this quiz. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Goodbye.